that scene, the beginning scene of the series, was the scene that I auditioned with. And I actually made a self-tape. So I guess a little context is that I had just directed myself in my first short film. So I was kind of in the process of looking at myself, in a frame objectively and setting up a shot. So I highly recommend that to any actor, to try to direct yourself. It's very hard.
Yeah, first of all, I have to attest to Britt's tape that she made. It was great. It really made a huge difference that she had put so much into it and clearly had approached it as a filmmaker as well as an actor. It was really impressive, and she was excellent in it. So it wasn't just that it was a cool tape. She did a great job, and we all watched it a bunch of times.
Welcome to the SAG-AFTRA Foundation's Conversations at Home program. I'm Jenelle Riley at Variety. And now it is my pleasure to introduce the stars of Severance: Michael Chernus, Jen Tullock, Zach Cherry, Patricia Arquette, Tramell Tillman, Britt Lower, and Adam Scott. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks.
Thanks,
Jenelle.
Again, congratulations on the show. I know that everyone is obsessed with it, myself included. This is an audience of your fellow actors. So I actually always like to start by asking, how did you get your SAG card? What was the job that brought that very vital piece of paper to you? And let's start with Michael.
I did a commercial. I think I did a Burger King commercial. And then I got my AFTRA card doing a soap opera, like Under Five. When I graduated from drama school, there were like 3 soap operas in New York. There was like Guiding Light and As the World Turns and Another World, I think. And those were like some of the only TV jobs in New York at the time. So,
Jen, for you?
It was a Walmart commercial. And it's shot in Chicago, and I got to fly to Chicago and stay in a hotel that had a robe. And I was like, this is it. This is it. This is it. Never get better than this.
Just a robe, not a bed, or just
very low stakes. Yeah.
Zach, for you?
I think it was, it might've been Crashing or Kimmy Schmidt, one of those. Yeah.
Right out of the gate?
Yeah, I don't remember. I really don't remember.
Did you get a robe?
No robe, no.
Britt, for you?
I was I played a point guard in this movie called The Winning Season with Sam Rockwell. And I was like, it was called like a special skills background.
Uh-huh.
And so I played basketball, and like, I had the time of my life. I love basketball so much. And I was like, I'm acting and playing basketball at the same time. It was the best.
So wait, you actually put like basketball under special skills, and it was real?
Yeah, it was real. And there was the audition was like, you went and like played basketball in a gym. It was about high school girls basketball. So it was all these women playing basketball together. I mean, I was in heaven.
I always thought people just made stuff up for special skills. I didn't realize that.
It was real.
Yeah.
Adam, for you?
I was doing a bunch of background work trying to get my SAG card in the summer of '93, and I was almost there. And then I got lines on a show, and at the last second, got to just automatically get my SAG card, which was great. But at the same time, I was so like disappointed because I was almost there with getting the amount of points needed for the SAG card doing background. But I ended up it was the lines on a MTV show called Dead at 21, the pilot for Dead at 21, as everyone I'm sure knows.
Patricia?
I did a movie. I think it was this movie I did called Pretty Smart, that I shot in Greece, and I turned 18 there, and it was kind of crazy.
Wow.
A lot of vomiting, a lot of teenagers. Yeah, don't drink too much ouzo. That's my lesson to the.
And Tramell?
I did a lot of theater, so it took me a minute to get into television and film. And so it wasn't until I did a lot of like day playing and background work. And I was very fortunate to book a series regular gig, Dietland. That was my first series regular gig.
And that was your first SAG job?
That was my first official SAG job. They said, Tramell, you got to join SAG. So I said, okay.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
Tramell and Zach have the most impressive SAG card.
You
Sorry,
know,
what?
No, it's just a lot of money. You have the most adventurous.
It was Walmart.
Walmart.
And Walmart.
With the rope.
Well, again, congratulations on a fantastic show and on your SAG Award nominations, which is quite an achievement in a year full of so many amazing casts. I would love to know how each of you sort of came to the project and also how much you knew about the show going in. And I want to start with Patricia and Adam, because you obviously had both worked with Ben Stiller before, and I believe he approached you personally about these parts. But how much did you know at the start? Was there any kind of a script or a Bible to go off of before you said yes?
I knew very little. I think I was given one episode and then it just gave me all these questions and I asked Ben and it just led to more questions, and Dan Erickson, our writer, was answering, but it was very, very beguiling, the answers. So at a certain point, I just had to say, I have no idea where we're going, but I'm going. Adam was the first on, so.
Yeah, Ben called me it was January of 2017. I remember because I was in Sundance and I was inside watching the Muslim ban had just been put into effect. So I was glued to CNN and had to go outside to take to call Ben back, or he called me or something. And so I was standing in the snow and he told me about just sort of the big idea, the premise of the show. He didn't have any script or anything to show me. He was just like, I just want to tell you about this idea and it's a cool thing. And it was a couple of years later that I actually saw a script. Saw a couple scripts like 2 years later. And the first thing that occurred to me when I actually read the scripts was, I'm never going to get this, because it was so good. I was like, why would I get this? And, but luckily I ended up getting it a little down the road. But yeah, so it was like, it was a while ago, but then I guess when I ended up reading the scripts, it was just a few months before everybody else started coming on board.
And Patricia, I'm curious how much you knew when you read that first script. Did you know that I know you're not playing dual roles because it's the same person, but in essence, you're playing two parts of a person since she's also undercover. Was that given to you in advance, or did you just read the script and find out?
Well, I got the pilot and there's not a lot of me in the pilot. So I was also like, are you sure you want me for this part? I don't really know what I'm playing. Then they explained there was these kind of two different aspects or characters. So it was all very nebulous and confusing, honestly. And then I thought they were two different people. So I was like pitching these different looks, okay, I like this idea of white hair for this one and this other thing for the other one. And then they were saying, no, it's not two people. So I was like, you are confusing me. What am I doing? Because really Lumen is confusing.
Yeah. And so was it to a certain degree just a real leap of faith with Ben?
Absolutely. It was like, I don't know what I'm doing, but Dan has written something very interesting. I trust Ben. I'm going to jump in here. I'm going to work with these great actors. Let's check it out.
For the rest of you, I'm curious about the process of landing your roles. And again, if it was an audition, how much you knew coming in and what the process was like. And I want to start with Britt, because in some ways, Helly is our introduction to this world. Not some ways, she is. And I just kind of wonder how you prepare to play a character who's basically a blank slate, for most of the season.
Well, that scene, the beginning scene of the series, was the scene that I auditioned with. And I actually made a self-tape at the request of my agents, who called me and basically said, "You're never going to get this role, but can you make a self-tape just in case we can get it to the right people? We think you're right for this." And I read the script thinking, with that kind of freedom that you get from thinking you're never going to get something, you're like, well, at least I get to play her today while I'm making the self-tape in my bathroom. And there was something so refreshing about being a character on a journey and not knowing anything, and having the job to be the eyes of the audience and be in a state of discovery and investigation, and just being super present. It's kind of Helly's job, is to be very grounded and present to what's happening and ask what the hell is going on. And that was also my job as an actor, being like, what the hell is going on? What is the show? I'm the eyes, and also just, she's the fire starter. So I to this day, I'm just so lucky I got to be her that day in my bathroom, and then I still am getting to put her shoes on.
Can I get really nerdy and specific for a second? Because I think actors would love to know, was it literally the opening scene where like she opens her, how far do you go? I'm guessing you're not laying on a table in real life, or maybe you are.
The floor of so I guess a little context is that I had just directed myself in my first short film. So I was kind of in the process of looking at myself, in a frame objectively, and setting up a shot. So I highly recommend that to any actor, to try to direct yourself. It's very hard, but I was in that mode, and I was on the floor of my bathroom, and the scene, to Dan's credit, is exactly the same as it is it didn't change, So if you look at what he put out initially, it's the same as what's on the show. So I think the best advice I can give anyone is like, pretend you're a director and you're an actor, you've showed up on a set and you're auditioning, and there's no director and you have to direct yourself for the day. Mm-hmm. What would you do?
And because obviously the chemistry is so vital to the show, I'm curious, at what point did you and Adam, I mean, I knew you'd worked together before, but did you have any kind of a chemistry read for the show?
Yeah. First of all, I have to attest to Britt's tape that she made. It was great. And it really made a huge difference that she had put so much into it, and clearly had approached it as a filmmaker as well as an actor. It was really impressive, and she was excellent in it. So it wasn't just that it was a cool tape. She did a great job, and we all watched it a bunch of times. And then Britt came in, and yeah, we had worked together before, and so the minute Britt walked in, I was like, oh, right, yeah, Britt, of course. This is going to be great. And at the same
moment, I'm thinking, I'm never getting this job.
Right.
It's so cool that I'm in the room right now, and I'm getting to do this again.
Yeah, so it was fun, and it was immediately felt right, and she was great,
Tramell and Zach, your characters are mostly seen as innies, but we do sort of learn that they have backstories to some degree, having lived this life for a bit. Again, I'm curious how you came to the part and how you chose to approach the characters coming into the casting process. And let's start with Tramell.
Sure. So I was working on a Broadway play, and it was my Broadway debut in 2018, and it was short-lived. And we got the notice that we are not moving forward. So like any actor, we're trying to find the next gig. And so I was pounding the pavement, and I ran across this project that came across my desk. I think it was called Tumwater at the time, from Bess and Rachel Tenner, our casting directors. And I didn't have much information. All I knew is that Milchick was an enthusiastic company man. And I said, okay, well, how are we going to do this? And just as Britt shared earlier, you got to make a choice and go direct yourself and have fun with it. So I went into the audition room and just threw it to the wall. And I didn't think I was going to get it because, you do the audition and then you leave it and go home and have a burger and then, you go for another audition. And I remember it was about in January of 2020 that I got a call back. And I went down to the studio and did the callback with Ben and with Dan. And it was a success for me because I made Ben Stiller laugh. Okay, I won no matter what. I got to the audition on time and I made Ben Stiller laugh. And I believe it was a week after I was offered the role. And we started up, and then, February 2020, things kind of halted a little bit. So I'm sorry, I didn't. Is the other part of the question was the approach to
Yeah. Because at what point, I guess, did you realize your character was going to be bossing around the likes of John Turturro and Christopher Walken?
Well, that came a lot later for me, and as I started to suss through, I had to make sense of who this guy was and why he was in this bizarre place. And I didn't have all the intel, but what was really clear to me is that he was really devoted to this company, and he believed in the rules, and he believed in establishing order. I believe my audition tape was the circle game. Y'all remember the circle game in season 1? We did the introductions, and it was there in that moment where Mark asks about Petey. That I said, oh, okay, something else is going on here. It's like, this is what's really, that's fun.
That's so cool to know. I didn't know.
Did you not have the much more information than just the scenes? You must not have.
No.
Yeah.
Now, when I first got the audition, because it was mainly like a general, essentially.
Yeah.
So everything was very pared down, very simple. And then the callback, it still was a little simple.
Yeah.
And then it wasn't until, of course, you got the role and it was like, okay, here's some more information.
Yeah.
I know you can't tell us, but how much do you know about Seth? Because I think, Mr. Milchek. I honestly think of all the characters, he fascinates me the most because I'm dying to know what his outside life is. Do you write a whole character backstory and then maybe find out it's not even accurate?
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what it was for me. I try to approach these characters and make them three-dimensional as possible. So I always create a nice little backstory. And what was really great about working with Dan and Ben is that we collaborate and talk about, well, what do you see? How do you see this character? What do you think his backstory is? And we exchange notes, and then, I'll see if it made it in on the floor, on the page when I read it. And sometimes it does, and sometimes it doesn't. So, but as an
actor, you're using that backstory, I imagine, whether it shows up or not.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Then what happens if something contradicts it?
Well, I mean, there's always a discussion of it, and they have more intel than I do for that, because they're writing and have this long view. So just as Patricia said, it takes a lot of trust. So trusting that they know what they're doing and they know the vision that they have for it, I lean in and let it go.
When I was younger, I'd sometimes, like other shows, I would have a backstory and it dramatically differed from a new backstory they wrote. And there were times when I was younger where I would have a hard time. Like, that doesn't make sense because I actually made this choice. That's the opposite of this. And I had a hard time bridging that gap. But I think that's part of just getting older is like, just jump that gap. Now make this new thing. It can be alive. It can be a new thing. And not hang yourself up on invisible rules that you've created that nobody else can really see.
Yeah.
It's also like the show is about duality, right? And people have different ways of behaving in different environments. So even if they behave one way that you think they would in season 1, or people do change. And even if it's a contradictory behavior than what you planned, I think that's so human.
To that end, I know this show is full of so many twists and surprises. Seeing Dylan as a dad was not something I anticipated. That might have been my biggest jaw dropper of the season. I don't know why. I just assumed he had a very different lifestyle. So similar question for you. How did you sort of come to this part, and what did you know about Dylan going in?
I came to it similarly with a self-tape initially. I also similarly assumed there was no way I was going to get the part. With all self-tapes, I kind of just do them and send them away and then never think about it again. And then I had a call back with Ben and Dan, which also felt like just getting there was a victory. And then when I found out I got the part, Dylan was kind of a guy who he really only cared about the work and didn't ask a lot of questions. So I sort of approached it the same way, in that I was like, well, I don't really need to know that much more about who he is as an outie, because he doesn't really care. And also he really likes to tell himself stories about who he might be. So I kind of just let them give me the information as it came. I did know that he would find out he had a child at some point early on in the process, but I kind of just let the information come to me as I needed it, because that sort of felt like how the character approached his life. So that's what I did.
Do you remember the scene you initially auditioned with?
Yes, I think it's the first scene he's in, where it's Adam and I'm kind of giving him a hard time about he's sounding sick, and I tell him if he gets me sick, he's going to screw up my performance. It was that scene that I auditioned with.
Oh, wow. At what point, because it sounds like most of you really didn't think you were going to be cast in this. At what point did you sort of realize that you had a shot at Dylan, or that Dylan was yours?
Well, the callback I thought went really well. I was pleased with how it went, and I felt like Dan and Ben and I were kind of on the same page about the character. So I hoped, but you never know. Like, sometimes you leave an audition feeling like it was the worst one you've ever done, and then immediately you find out you got the part, and sometimes the reverse. So I had no idea. So it wasn't until I heard for sure that I had it that I really felt like it was mine.
Even so, then you finally accepted it.
Yeah. I'm still working on accepting it.
I don't think I accepted it until the finale episode came out. And I was like, oh, I'm on the show.
They probably can't replace you at this point, right? And Jen and Michael, similar to the rest of everyone, how did you come to this project? And I'm always curious, you're sort of weirdly, because we're talking about these people who have these inner lives, your characters are sort of on the outside and you have to be unaware of everything going on. I'm curious what that's like to play when it's almost like you're in a separate show at times.
We talked a lot about that when we first started, because it felt a bit like we were beaming in from outer space. I mean, we knew what the ethos of the show was and that we were so excited about it. But, other than interacting with Adam and Patricia, which was so amazing, we did feel like we were kind of on our own little lily pad. And I think the only challenge that posed was figuring out tone. So we were trying to not police our tone, but it was hard not to, because the world is different outside of Lumen. And so I think we had kind of different approaches to what we let ourselves be privy to. Had you read all of them? Did you read
I still haven't read any of them. I haven't. I don't even.
It's
We're just writing his own book. He doesn't have time.
Yeah, it's yours. It's yours. It's been sweet.
It's wonderful to hear these people talk.
Yeah. So I did make the decision early on. I thought, well, if the whole thrust of Devon's narrative is that she is in the dark, and that is sort of her driving dramatic action, is trying to figure out what the hell is going on, then I don't need to be privy to what's going on in Lumen. So I would intentionally leave. I would skip over those scenes. So I didn't know a lot of what was happening until I watched the show with my friends in real time. And I would be like, oh yeah, okay, that makes sense. That tracks. But also some big surprises. But it was also special for us, I think, because we got very close very fast. And it informed, I think, what we had as a married couple dynamic.
Yeah. And now we're taking our cabaret act on the road.
I'd love for you to see it. We're opening in Duluth.
38 cities in 23 days.
Juggling, dancing, the whole thing.
No, in all seriousness, really quickly, to piggyback on that, I think for us, the tone was the trickiest part, because we're not in the inner world. And, we made the season one during all the height of COVID. So we really hadn't met a lot of the other cast. And I was cast later when the show went back into production after COVID. So I think someone else was going to be Rickon originally. And Ben and I had a Zoom meeting, and I said to him, I was like, if this character existed in isolation, it could go a lot of different ways. I feel like there's a bigger version of Rickon. There's a more broad comedic version, but I was like, what the hell is the rest of this show? And he was just like, trust me, we'll figure it out. Like, we'll do a bunch of different takes, and we'll do a big one, and we'll do a small one, and we'll find it together. And so I think for a lot of our stuff, it was just like throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks.
Wow. And then
Because you rarely get that opportunity.
Yeah.
did you not sort of know what it would look like until you saw the final product?
Like what the performances would look like?
Yeah, because if he's having you do all these
Yeah.
different things.
To some extent. I mean, I think my biggest worry is that it wouldn't fit the rest of we eventually read all the scripts, and I got a sense in my brain of maybe what Lumen felt like, but it was like, how is a birthing center with kelp on the wall going to match this stark, dystopian, corporate building? Like, how are these two worlds linked? So that was, yeah, I didn't know. I was worried.
And to Dan's credit, I mean, I think eventually once we got into a rhythm, it's both the nuance and these worlds that Dan created that don't feel so disparate once we all sort of locked in. But it's also Adam, because I think Mark is the connective tissue. So, Mark is the connective tissue for the Lumen folks, and Mark is the connective tissue for us. And so it was Adam's performance also was a huge part of helping us sort of settle in, because what he was bringing and giving to us and his generosity made it a lot easier.
I'm curious about that, because you really do feel like family, and that means you can sort of say anything to Mark.
Yeah.
In that way that I did that develop pretty organically? I don't know if any of you had met beforehand. You really, it really does feel like you've known each other for years.
Had any of us met before? You, Britt and Adam, you had worked together before.
Yeah. But yeah, and Jen, as far as like the brother sister thing, I think that immediately I just felt like Jen, you just feel, she's just such a facile, open actor. You kind of feel like safe to do and say anything, and she'll be right there to handle it and turn it into something that's entertaining and makes sense. And so I just immediately felt really safe and in good hands with her as a scene partner. And so it just felt easy right away. And that needed to be what that it needed to be the only safe harbor for Mark's Audi, for Audi Mark. She is the only person and when he's with her, place where he feels safe and not unhappy.
It is funny though, seeing Jen and Michael with Zach. It's like kind of blowing my mind a little, because I'm like, no, that's crossing the streams. Those are two different worlds.
Yeah, I know. I was like, hold on, this is wrong.
Me and the whole
Until press. A lot of us didn't meet until, no, because like I said, Michael and I got to be with Adam and Patricia, which was such a joy. But Britt and I had met on the plane to New York for the table read before COVID hit. In fact, it was like March 9th. And I remember it was sort of like, oh, this thing is happening overseas and we should use hand sanitizer. And we sort of brokered a friendship because of that, because we were like, this is nuts. We're going to New York for this table read. And then the world shut down and we had stayed in touch, and now we're very close friends. But I didn't get to meet Zach and Tramell until I ran and tackled Tramell on the carpet, I think much to everyone else's chagrin, at least people taking photos, because I was like, hey, it's you. But we were so excited because we all sort of texted and said hello, but it was bizarre to be that disparate until, recently, not too long ago.
And now, spoiler alert, we're the hot throuple of season 2.
Please make that happen. That is my fanfic.
Spinoff.
Birthing center, Dylan.
Did Dylan now? Who's the father?
We're really going to learn a lot more about Dylan. I actually kind of curious what it's like on set. Like, do you all share theories with each other, or do you, maybe even more this season, because now that the show's out, do you read the fan theories and sort of laugh, or maybe laugh nervously because some of them are accurate?
I read a few that are really sharp. I've read some that are crazy and exciting, like that would have been a great idea, and then some I'm like, oh no, they're way off.
I remember at the beginning of season 1, reading a couple of things where people totally guessed the exact thing that would happen. Like, I think there was one that Dan or Ben or someone sent to me, and they were like, "Oh shit, this guy totally figured it out." But there's that, but then there's also really incredible kind of alternate theories as well.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, it really isn't about the twist. It really is about the journey. So yeah. I'm enjoying that. But can you predict something like when, do they tell you up front what a waffle party is? Or does that just show up in a script? No.
I remember not knowing what that was, but being told it was important. And then like when we got to episode 7 or something, being like, oh, this is a waffle party. So no, I did not know that initially.
What were those days on set like?
Wild. Pretty wild. It was, we shot that, the waffle party was pretty late at night in this very weird kind of old house in a museum. And the dancers were there in their masks, and they had like a waffle artist making waffles upstairs. So the whole place smelled like waffles. It was very strange experience.
That's kind of interesting because Dylan is supposed to know what a waffle party is, right?
Yeah, he very much knows.
So as Zach, would you have played it differently if you had known?
I don't think so. And a few people have mentioned so much of it was just about trusting Ben and being like, oh, he knows where this is going. He knows kind of, what he wants out of it. So a lot of it, I was kind of like, I don't need to know. I'll just trust that I'm doing something that will somehow work.
And the design of the show and the props and every element is so exacting that it makes our jobs as actors like so wonderful and easy in some ways, because we're just responding to the exact thing that's supposed to be in front of us. And it feels like you're walking into an art installation when you walk onto these sets. Like you pull open a drawer and there's a notepad with details of the company, and it's immersive, and so I think that adds to the level of trust. And you can just be like, well, I'm a human responding to imaginary circumstances, but it feels pretty real.
We just have a lot of fertility statues.
Me too.
Yeah.
And I'm keep hearing the word trust again and again. And I don't know if it's normal for actors to put that much trust in the people who are, I would hope that it would be. And so I don't like Tramell, you're sort of new to TV, as you were saying, is this the way it always works for you? Have you always felt sort of this trust with the people you're working with, or is this unique?
You always hope that you get paired or grouped with people that you can trust, people that are open, facile, as Adam has said earlier, and giving. And, sometimes it doesn't always work that way. But with this cast, this ensemble, this entire group, everyone has been so generous, so welcoming. And you got to look at the timeline. We were filming during this pandemic, in the height of it, where there was a lot of uncertainty. And so you had to have trust with each other. And there was a lot of care. And we're in this process right now where we're filming season 2, and there seems to be this vast juxtaposition where I know for me on set, I feel like I can breathe on season 2, because I feel like I've gotten to know these people a lot better, connected with them. I've admired their work from afar and seeing them on screen. And then now I get to play with them one-on-one. And it's such a delight. It's such a beautiful ensemble. It's a beautiful crew telling this crazy, insane story.
Since you brought up season 2, I'm not going to ask about that. I am going to ask, though, you all must be pretty good at keeping secrets. Do people come up and do they sort of badger you, or are they more respectful, like they kind of don't want to know, because I know people love talking about this show.
I think they know the nature of the show. It's like there's spoilers and, no one wants to get anything leaked out. And everyone's been really, really respectful. I have friends of mine, they know that I'm filming and they say, Tramell, don't tell me anything. I don't want to know what you're doing. I don't want to see what you're wearing. Don't show me anything. So everyone has been really game and buying into the nature of the show.
Michael, do you
ask, but they don't want to know. Like that's been my experience. People, they do want to ask, but then they're happy for you to say, I can't tell you anything. So it's like, they want to start a conversation, but they really don't want the details because they want to experience it when they get to see it.
Jen and Michael, do you feel a little relieved you're off the hook here? Do people badger you or are you in the clear?
I would in the clear. I don't know that we're badgered as much, maybe as the Lumen folks. Badgered generally, yes, but that's just that we're
badger.
I'm doing what I can.
Yeah,
But-
just get stuff thrown at us on the streets.
Yes.
Yeah,
I did.
just generally.
My family have definitely been like, come on, you can tell me. Like, what's it? To which, but we've the way we've received information about the season has moved at a different pace than it did the first season, because we had I think we had more to read at one time when we went into the first season, and this has been more of a moving beast, which has been cool.
Yeah, I always say to people, I actually don't know anything. Like,
Yeah.
truly, like not that I would say anything, but I feel like I've been kept pretty in the dark anyway. So yeah.
Yeah.
I just know about the throuple plot line, and that's about it. Yeah.
Which is most seasons.
Yeah.
Or I guess I shouldn't say that, but
Yeah.
And again, it's such a multi-protagonist show. Like people keep saying, like, I can't wait to see season 2. And I'm like, yeah, me too, because then I'll get to see everyone else's work, because you're just there on the day with your own stuff, and getting to see what everyone else does when it comes out is like such a thrill.
Well, I can't wait to see season 2. Again, I want to thank you all so much for being here today and for sharing your craft and your stories with your fellow actors. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Jenelle.
Thanks for having